I walked through the door I always sought, I always found. It closed gently behind me. I watched again, helplessly, as the 12-year-old version of myself endured the type of pain that adults fool themselves into thinking they can deny their children. I watched my little brother burn. I saw more of his body this time. The initial shock gave way to an unrelentingly critical doctor's eye. His charred vertebrae and demolished spinal cord spilled disgustingly onto the ground like discarded butcher's offal. I realized, vaguely, that Timmy must have landed on his neck, bursting his destroyed innards as his barbecued skin shredded from the impact of the collapsing house. It broke more of me than I had thought possible. Deep fissures cleaved my mind in ways that I once would have believed impossible to endure. But I left the broken pieces of me on the road, and found that I could travel lighter once there was less of me to carry. It was, to be honest, brutally efficient. In that moment, I understood how the world could change a person into a quintessential shitbitch. And, in becoming stronger, I was able to make it through the journey yet again, this time confidently grasping the door on the other side, now more whole because there was less of my spirit. Smoke hit me first, followed by the warm humidity of an old Missouri summer. And of course, there was the scream. I collapsed on the ground, unable to move any further. I got up, of course, because what else was there to do? I had to choose between moving on and spending the rest of my life completely immobile. I was not going to allow the location of fate's arbitrary decision to determine the rest of my years, so I stood and I moved. I endured everything again, and I discovered just how much of myself could be broken while still moving forward. I arrived at the end. I opened the door, and I walked into the scream. I once heard that the trees in West Texas are shaped by winds that rip across the open plains. The constant pressure warps them. In time, no matter how great the tree, it is permanently marred by a world that would never relent. The original design of the plant becomes unsalvageable, and the brokenness evolves into an indelible part of the tree's character. Can never hope to become what it had once intended. But still, the tree grows. It was easier to travel without the burden of hope, so I discarded its last vestiges upon the 7th opening, and casually found my way into Dr. Scritt's office. "Close the door behind you," she ordered. I obeyed out of practicality and stood before her. "Well," she regarded me over her thin spectacles, "are you going to have a long cry about it, and then talk about what happened? Or will you be skipping the part that has no practical value, so that we don't waste any more of my time?" I sat in the chair across from here. "I've exhausted every tear," I responded simply. "Good," she shot back. "I hope that fact lightened your burden." I almost asked her why she was so mean, but silenced myself. People only change if they want to change. I had no desire to quarrel with facts that didn't care if I believed in them. She eyed me carefully. "You never told all of the story, because you were afraid of what people would say." I nodded. My mind was so completely stretched, shocked, used, that I had nothing left to offer but stark practicality. "How did you know?" She looked sad. "Because, Dr. Aphelis, that's everyone's story." I stared at her blankly. She sighed. "Each one of us is ashamed about some part of our past. We believe that keeping it a secret allows us to control the thing that is beyond our grasp. This stems from the fact that people are idiots." I had no response. Letting go of the false belief means controlling the past, Ellie, at least to the small extent that we still can. You're not losing it by dropping the illusion. I took a deep breath. "I feel like admitting it makes you a shitty person, yes, I know," she responded with a roll of her eyes. "But admitting the truth does not make you a shitty person. It's what you did that makes you shitty." She flared her nostrils and was silent. Without neither preamble nor permission, I began my explanation. "Timmy and I had been fighting," I heaved. I just received a new laptop. Since I was 12 and he was 6, I got many of the things that Timmy wanted but couldn't have. I gloated when he cried, because it made me feel like I had more. My dad was a janitor, and we couldn't afford most of what I thought I needed. So when I finally got the laptop I knew I deserved, I taunted my brother worse than I ever had before. I drew a deep, shuddering breath. So he stole it when I wasn't looking and locked himself into my bedroom. I had never, ever been so angry. I actually told him to fuck off, which was the first time I'd ever said those words. His favorite stuffed animal, this ridiculous oversized bear, was left unguarded in his bed. So, I stole it, yelled across the house that I was going to destroy it, and ran downstairs. I buried my face in my hands. I threw it on the stove and turned on the pilot light, and I was so happy when it finally caught fire. Timmy ran into the kitchen just as the flames engulfed his bear. I saw just how deeply I'd hurt him, deeper than he'd ever felt, and I was overjoyed. The pain I had caused my brother seemed so good in that moment, and I don't know why, but I was sure he deserved it. I paused. Then I continued, because there was nothing else to do. He told me that he was going to throw my laptop out the window, that he would lock himself in my room and smash it to pieces on the ground. Then he turned and ran, cleared my throat. So I grabbed the stuffed bear's leg, which was dangling off the edge of the stove and not yet burning, and I hurled it at him. I pursed my lips and nodded solemnly to myself. Why does any 12-year-old make a decision, other than because it seemed like a good idea at the time? I didn't plan on having the bear hit the wall and land in the trash can, and I had no idea how quickly a garbage fire could spread through a kitchen. I bit my lip until I tasted blood. But I was old enough to weigh my options. I knew that I had enough time to get up the stairs, but probably not back down again, because the fire had consumed half the kitchen in under 20 seconds. I drew several shallow breaths. I also knew that I could exit through the kitchen's back door to immediate safety. More shallow breaths. I had to make a practical decision in a split second, and I was still angry in that split second. Angry at my brother, but also at myself, though I was too young to understand it at the time. I swallowed. It would be so much easier to say that it was either all cold practicality or else all hot vengeance. I reasoned like a child, but was mature enough to understand what my decision meant. The reality is that both concepts pulled my mind across a twisted landscape of opposing ideas, eschewing the decency of being all one thing or all of another. I dropped my hands to my sides and stared unwaveringly at Dr. Scrit. I decided to turn my back and run outside. I remember every part of that choice. It shattered my heart and my mind badly enough that I know I'll never be whole again. I took one more long breath. But each day I heard a little more, because I can't stop thinking of what I would do if I could go back. And I know that I would probably still make the same choice. For the first time that I could remember, she broke eye contact first. "Ellie," she sighed. "Why do you think that St. Francis Hospital would have such an arbitrary set of rules for its interns?" I responded without emotion. "The rules come from somewhere beyond us. I understand that now. We're just here to follow them." She looked sad. Then, slowly, Dr. Scrit shook her head. "No, Dr. Aphelis, that isn't true." She rubbed her eyes. "What was the first rule? Never, under any circumstances, share your copy of the rules with anyone else," I replied robotically. She raised an eyebrow. "And how does that make any sense?" I stumbled as I tried to remember her words. It was important to see. Not all of us were going to make it dash." "That much is true," she responded dismissively. "We've seen more than enough evidence of that tonight. But you're wrong about the rule coming from somewhere else." She stared pointedly across her desk at me. I stared back with incredulity. Don't understand. Then you're starting to get it, she shot back. You weren't top of your class, Dr. Aphelis, not even close, but you're at least smart enough to be a doctor. Can you attempt to figure this out? I quickly calculated the odds of making an ass of myself in ratio to the probability of answering correctly, and remained silent. She shook her head in disappointment. Did you really never make the connections, Dr. Aphelis? The trial of jumping off of a roof? Judgment from an authoritative janitor? Multiple different rules about burning children. My jaw fell. The first rule prohibits the sharing of rules, because no one has the same set. Each doctor is faced with his or her own list of restrictions, and most aren't up to the challenge. I struggled to find the words. Every rule is just for me? Dr. Scrit removed her glasses. People think that this hospital wants to destroy them, when in reality each person is given every tool needed for survival. She snorted. It's impossible to stop most individuals' desire to kill themselves. I stared at her desk in shock. But, Rule 4, why did it tell me not to touch your Reese's peanut butter cups? She stared at me like I'd been caught masturbating in a fish tank. Because it's my favorite candy. I nodded slowly. Mine too. Dr. Scrit placed the glasses back on her head. You're going to ask what this place is, she continued slowly. I've survived St. Francis far longer than most. That's why people expect me to tell them. She paused, choosing each of her next words very carefully. So before you say that you want me to tell you the truth, you should understand this fact. Here she bored her eyes into mine, and this time it was me who turned away early. There are things that I can't know and things that I don't know. Embracing these ideas as a strength instead of a weakness is the reason I've endured where others have not. We were quiet for some time. Can you see the individual rules on each doctor's paper? I asked suddenly. She smirked. No, but I can see what's written on their faces, which is the same thing. I don't get it, I responded honestly. She sighed in disappointment. Do you remember when I reminded you of Rule 9? I thought back to our conversation just after Dr. Dorian had died. You told me that the morgue needed 13 cadavers at all times, I replied confidently. No, she shot back. You told me that. I acted like I had known the entire time, and you responded to my confidence. Each person's list of rules is their own battle to fight. To be blunt, I'd rather see the doctors fail themselves through inadequacy than see the patients suffer because someone was unable to live up to their own unearned arrogance. I blinked. I'd like to earn my arrogance, I said. Dr. Scrit smiled. The good news is that I think you might have the endurance to survive the unusually lengthy journey it would take for you to achieve earned arrogance. The door burst open before I could say anything more. I said nothing as a familiar janitor walked confidently into Dr. Scrit's office. For the first time, I heard him speak. 3 children have been dead for 119 minutes. 13 people are not in the morgue. And Dr. Falher ignored me when I tried to stop him from stealing Dr. Grault's list. Dr. Scrit stood and I followed suit. Wait, Dr. Scrit, please. I looked at her in desperation. She gave me a look that told me I had 1/4 of a second to speak. Is this real? She looked away and walked around her desk. Death is real. Nothing else is guaranteed. Doctors are tasked with delaying the inevitable and embracing the fact that 100% of our efforts will eventually fail. I walked briskly after her as she followed the janitor out of her office. If death is the only real thing, then this life is the place where impossible things can happen. Stop doubting that fact. Now grab the sulfuric acid. We're going to attempt to prevent your fellow interns from killing each other or any of the patients.